Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'd like to welcome you here on this special occasion, in this special place, in memory of our friend and family, Dave Craig. And so, of course, Dave meant a lot to us here at the UT Gardens, meant a lot to everyone that's standing here. So first of all, I just want to acknowledge what the plaque says. I'm sure you've all had an opportunity to look at it. But the plaque on Dave's bench says, in memory of Mr. Dave Craig, 11/29/31 to 3/9/2020, UT Professor Emeritus, teacher, educator for 32 years, Knox County Master Gardener since 2002. He was president in 2004, initiated the Knox County Master Gardener training program, founder of Habitat Urban Gardens, and it was presented by his loving family and the Knox County Master Gardeners, you folks who are here today. So I was thinking this morning, is a bench really appropriate for Dave Craig? Because he never sat down. But it's certainly appropriate because Dave cared for others, and other people need to sit down. And so it's certainly appropriate that we have a bench in memory of him, and that we have it here in the kitchen garden that was so special to him, and I'm sure Holly will mention that as well. I first became acquainted with Dave, I guess, over 20 years ago, back when our plant sales were just people digging things in their yard and bringing them up by the greenhouses. We worked in one of the little driveways, and we just divided plants from people's yards and sold and exchanged them up there. And Dave was a part of that, and then our relationship began to grow from there. He was, of course, this will be mentioned by other folks as well, but you know, his energy was inexhaustible. And all of this he did in retirement, you know, it was just amazing. You know, Dave meant a lot to us as a horticulturist, as an educator. We were involved with his hug program in a peripheral way, providing plants for him that we dug out of the garden. And, you know, he wasted no words in telling me what he was after or what he had to offer. Now, James, I saw y'all had some leftover plants over there. What are you going to do with them? You know, I've got this hug program and we need plants. Come on over. Let me show you what we've got. Bring those plants with you, and, you know, well, this will help us out. And it was like, yes, sir. I will be more than happy to do that. So, you know, he was just an awful lot of fun to work with. His energy, he was out here. If we had student interns and it was hot or it was rainy or it was cold, we could say, do you see Dr. Craig out there working? He is not complaining, and I suggest you not do the same and you follow his example. I mean, he was literally the tool that we used to teach by. So that was always special to us. But I'm sure, as all of you recognized in Dave, what was most special for me, and that was recognized by others, is that Dave exhibited his faith in a very subtle but uncertain way. There was no ambiguity there. He didn't beat you over the head with it. You could just tell by the way he lived his life and the way he interacted with you and with others that he was expressing the faith that he felt so deeply. And that example, I think, will stick with me forever. So we appreciate the fact that this is going in the garden. If there was a bench in every place that Dave helped out, Betty, Caesar, we'd be working on benches for years, you know. So we're really appreciative of the fact that it goes here. We thank you all, and I'm just glad Dave's right here with us. So thank you very much.
Okay, welcome, and thank you, James. Obviously, I wished I'd known Dave better, but anyway, I want to add my welcome to all of you. Really appreciate being here. It's really an honor and pleasure for me as president of KCMG to be present at this dedication ceremony for obviously a very important person whom you all know very, very well, and who's very important in our organization, in the history of our organization, Dave Craig. I want to thank James, Holly, and all of the UT Gardens staff for your help in making this day possible. This has been a plan for a long time. One, due to COVID, two, getting the bench, getting the plaque, one thing and another, and we really appreciate that. Also, in just providing a place that Dave obviously loved to garden and spend time here. So we appreciate that. I hope all of you know Nancy Howe. She has been instrumental in making this event happen in terms of the organization and hurting the Master Gardeners in terms of being here and in terms of getting the news out and all the details that you see here. I want to thank Marcia Lehman for our camera work today. Really appreciate it. And she's the expert on blueberries. Somebody was, Betty, you were asking, or Laurie or Susan, yeah. So she was helped transport the blueberries when those were changed. I also want to thank all of you for being here today and also for your contributions to making this bench happen. Not only Master Gardeners, but also friends of Betty and Dave who contributed, because without your contributions, we wouldn't have been able to dedicate this bench here today. And most importantly, I want to thank Betty. Susan came all the way from Nashville, and Laurie, for you all, for your help. And Betty has guided this process over these many months, and we appreciate your helping us make this happen here today. And most importantly, giving us, meaning Knox County Master Gardeners, the opportunity to partner with you and your family and friends to dedicate this bench here today. As I told Betty earlier, I met Dave, but I didn't really know him. I saw him at our monthly meetings. You know, there was a time when Knox County Master Gardeners actually met in person. It seems like a long time ago, but we did meet and we met in person. But I never really had the opportunity to know him. And obviously I missed out on a whole lot, as explained already by James, and you'll hear from others. So others will speak, you know, this morning about him and their knowledge of him. But as they speak, I would ask you to consider a fact that struck me that James alluded to a little bit when I read this plaque. And no, it wasn't that he was a UT professor emeritus or what was it, teacher educator for 32 years, or all those other things he did as a master gardener. What caught my attention that he was born in November 29, 1931. That means in 1961 he was 30. In 71 he was 40. In 81 he was 50. In 91 he was 60. In 2001 he was 70. And he wasn't a master gardener. He waited until he was over 70 to become a master gardener. And look at what all he accomplished and contributed to the Knox County Master Gardeners. These beautiful UT Gardens, as James said, all over the place. And his community in the 18 years he had between 1970 and his passing on March 9 of 2020. Truly remarkable and very inspirational for us young people. He was obviously an amazing person with lots of energy and passion for gardening, people, and KCMG. It's only fitting that we celebrate his life and what he loved doing, where he loved doing it, and by dedicating this bench today here next to the kitchen garden in honor and memory of our fellow Master Gardener, Dr. David G. Craig. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Holly Jones, as James said, staff member here. And I worked with Dave for quite a few years just recently, in the last few years. And it's really nice having this bench here at the kitchen garden in honor of Dave. He was an inspiration to all of us here at the Gardens. I appreciated working with him because he was inspiring both professionally and personally. He went out of his way to encourage me in my work. He told me more than once that he believed that this garden was important and that the work that I was doing here was important, and it means a lot to hear that from someone you respect, so I really appreciated that. Personally, he was inspiring because he was so active and engaged. He modeled a lifestyle that I hope to lead in my older years. He was just always so friendly and outgoing and had like his routine, and he told me he would go exercise before he would come work in the gardens, and I was just like, wow, I want to be like you, Dave. So I'm happy to be reminded of him, and I think that many people will appreciate this nice place to sit and rest and admire the beautiful garden. Thank you to Betty and to the Master Gardeners who made this happen. And I also want to thank Kathy Carpenter, who's a Master Gardener. She's out of town today, but she manages this whole area. She's an amazing volunteer, and she helped put these planters together and has been working tirelessly the past few weeks to make sure that it was all tidy, especially for this dedication. So I want to acknowledge her as well. Thank you.
Thank you everybody for being here. I came across David in 2010. And my partner over there, Linda Denton, we attended the Master Gardener training that same year. And we had to figure out some place to get our volunteer hours. What in the world could we do? And after looking around, the HUG program seemed to fit everything. I was still working, but I had the ability to get hours after a normal work day and on weekends. Man, it fit my schedule great. So we started out and introduced to David, and as we worked through that program, we found out that that entire program was designed by David. The paperwork involved. When you went to a house and did the landscaping, you had to have that day plan completed. And not only did you have to have the volunteers listed, you had to have the plants listed, and that became a real resource that you could go back to several years later and find out exactly what happened. So not only was he doing the immediate thing, he was looking at the future. So from that, that was really the most time that I spent with David. So a small amount of time here down here at the UT Gardens. And again, what everybody says, unbelievable amount of energy. And if I'm up in my 80s and I can run that hard, man, I would be so grateful. One other thing that really dawned on me is the Midwest connection. So I got to mention this because David was raised on a farm in the eastern part of Wisconsin. Betty was raised on a farm in the western part of Wisconsin in an area called Grant County, and that's the county I was born in, Grant County. They have a celebration each summer at Stonefield State Park, and they have a tremendous collection of old agricultural implements, and they're stored in that area by the State Historical Society. And David, and he was just excited about this, drove a tractor from just outside of Lancaster all the way to Cassville, probably 20 miles, and he said that was the same tractor that I used when I was farming. And he was just, I mean, he was pumped. He really thought that was the greatest thing. So, so there's a little Midwest connection. Thinking about Holly Jones and the blueberry farm up in Norris. And what's his name, Paul Baxter. He was raised on a farm in Stitzer, Wisconsin. Unbelievable. And then we thought about it a little more. I looked at the posting, I think it was on a Facebook page, and there was a picture of the labyrinth down over in that area of the garden. A fellow by the name of Bartholomeus made those all across the country. And he taught mathematics, I think, in the Twin Cities is where he came from. We had seen one of his labyrinths in the southwest area of Wisconsin. It was at Cincinnati Mounds. That probably means nothing to anybody. But, oh, really?
Two people from Grant County.
No kidding.
Yes.
All right. So he had made those all across the country. And it's amazing that the connections that you find with your history. This is my adopted country, been here since '75, and everybody has been really welcoming. It's been a great place to live. It's been really great to be involved with David. And as you listen to all of these things, think about what person could you not say yes to? And David is one of those. And if you think of David, there's a term that they use in, I don't know, it's some people in industry use it, and that's being a servant leader. And David is an example of really someone that is a servant leader. He worked, he taught, he did everything he could to be successful and make you successful. That was really important. So anyway, thank you, David. Thank you for this bench. Thank you, UT.
I think, Dan, you just gave evidence that all roads lead to the south. Betty.
I'm going to speak on behalf of our family, and I want to introduce my family to you. My oldest daughter, Susan, her husband, Jesse Walker, are here from Nashville. Our son, Scott, and his wife, Jill, live in Hillsboro, Oregon, and they could not be here for this. My youngest daughter, Lori Craig, lives in Knoxville. And my niece, Sharon, and her husband, Jeff Wilcox, came in from Wisconsin, Dells, Wisconsin, for this ceremony. They're our second group of kids, and we enjoy them a lot. I want to thank a lot of people here that have already been thanked. I want to thank you all for coming, first of all. I want to thank the speakers for what they had to say about Dave. I want to thank all of you who contributed to this memorial. And I want to thank Caesar and the Knox County Master Gardeners for contributing the memorial for this bench. As Caesar said, we had a lot of conversations back and forth about this bench, but we were so glad to have it. The fall before Dave passed away, he said, you know, you can do these benches in the garden, and I would really like to do one, but I think they cost $35,000. And I'm going, oh! They don't cost $35,000. If you're thinking about doing one, please consider it. I'm not sure where he got that number, unless somebody told him wrong.
I was doing what I could.
Oh, it was you, James. Oh boy. And I want to thank Holly and James for this location. The purple buildings here are called the Kitchen Gardens, for those of you who don't know, and that was where Dave spent a lot of time. Master gardeners have to contribute, isn't it 100 hours each year on community service to keep their standing, something like that? Dave would do 800 a year or so. But And I also want to thank Nancy Howell, who put together this program. Not only did Nancy work with Caesar and myself on this, she also did a program yesterday in the gardens for University Women's Club, and I know she's got 2 or 3 other things going on this weekend. So thank you, Nancy. She also helped me do the landscape plan for my house where I am now in Buckingham, something Dave was going to do and he just didn't get it done. Dave loved digging in the dirt. He spent a lot of time on his knees, and you may be able to see, we chose this picture because it was so much how he saw himself. Master Gardener hat, his ratty denim shirt, a Master Gardener t-shirt, and knee pads that he used all the time. He liked to put in plants and seed and watch them grow. He wasn't as keen on weeding. I don't know, Holly, he may have weeded for you.
Mostly harvesting. That was
Yeah. He didn't weed at home either. Okay. He always had a garden. Even when he was in graduate school at Cornell, the 3rd year we were there, we lived in an apartment because he was doing an internship, and he talked the landlord into letting him dig up a little section of a lawn so he could put some seeds in the ground. He was most proud to be a Master Gardener. He wore his shirts everywhere. When we would take trips, if they were in the U.S. or abroad, the Master Gardener shirts went into the suitcase, and he always was very willing to tell anyone who asked or didn't ask about being a Master Gardener and what it involved and what he did with it. Dave was born and reared on a dairy farm, as Dan mentioned, in Waukesha, Wisconsin. His parents taught him the value of hard work that stayed with him for all of his life. As mentioned, he was a teacher educator for 30 years. He was in ag education in Wisconsin, and then after his doctorate here at Tennessee. Martin did not have an ag ed department at that time, so he traveled with student teachers across the state of Tennessee for about the first 10 years. And he worked in general education with student teachers K through 12. And then with trainers and vocational ed people his last 10 years. In his retirement, this Master Gardener program allowed him to continue to educate people, and he really enjoyed it. There are blueberries planted in these 2 big urns, and that is most appropriate because when we lived out on Melton Hill Lake, he and a neighbor, for some reason, bought about 40 blueberry bushes, and they divided them up, and we had about 20 out there, and we would harvest 80 gallons of blueberries in a summer and take about 40 or 50 pints into the Hunger Helper Market at our church every Sunday. People would line up waiting for us to arrive for those blueberries. And Dave loved cookies. Well, he loved food, period, but he particularly loved cookies. And there are some cookies in packets here for you to take home and enjoy. He didn't really have a favorite, but there's some butterscotch oatmeal, there's chocolate chip, and then there's a finished pecan ball that we always had to have every Christmas. So I hope you enjoy them. And there are seeds from the Master Gardener program, right, Nancy, that are there to take. And also a program that we had at his service that got it put aside that people didn't see. So please take one of those. It has this picture on it. Holly, I want to thank you for letting him work in the kitchen garden. He couldn't wait to get down there every spring, and even if he couldn't wait until they were going to do seedlings. And he started in the greenhouses, as I recall, and then came in, yeah.
One of our earliest volunteers for the season. You know, things are rolling with Dave.
And it's been mentioned, Kathy Carpenter is a Master Gardener, and this is her adoptive spot. She wanted to be here, but her mother, I think, celebrated her 95th birthday this weekend, and so she's in Indiana. Dave was a lifelong Methodist. They've already mentioned about his faith. And I think he lived by John Wesley's rules. You may or may not know them. Do all the good you can. by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as you can. Thank you again for coming, and blessings to each of you.